Alright, so now we're going to do the lighting. So I'm going to go to File, I'm going to do Save As, and then I'm just going to call this Lighting Setup. Let's call this 03, or whatever number we're at. Okay, so now this lighting is going to be a bit different than our desk that we did. And the fact that we're using Mental Ray for this. Okay, so I'm going to hit this Render Settings button. Default is to go to Maya Software. I'm going to go to Mental Ray. And one of the important things to notice when you go to Mental Ray is that if you can't go to Mental Ray, which is a common thing, you have to go to Window Settings Preferences Plugin Manager. This is where all the plugins get loaded. Mental Ray is a plugin. And then find Maya 2 MR in here. Here is mine, Maya 2 MR. I just click Load and Auto Load, and I'm good to go. Okay, then it'll show up in the list, and then I can choose it from that list. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to enable color management. Okay, now that we have Mental Ray chosen, we're going to enable color management in here. Our file name, I'm just going to delete this. I'm going to right click and say Insert Camera Name. We're going to render out ifs, that's fine. We're going to do name.number.extension. We're not at the rendering stage yet, but I just like to set this stuff up right away. We're going to do 96 frames, so we'll just set this from 1 to 96. And our camera will have to come back and set this stuff up. Okay, our resolution is 960 by 540. Our render options, we're going to turn off the default light. Okay, so right away, that's what we have. And if I go through, close this, and I hit the render button, you'll see that I get nothing. Okay, so there is something here, we just can't see it. So I'm going to add in a light. So we're going to add in an area light, which is what we used before, but you'll see how the settings are going to be just a bit different. Same thing as before, this little nodule here has to point at what we want to light up. And I can use T and grab the pointy part and point it at my object. And grab this other part and use that. Now, just like before, you don't want to be too close to it because otherwise it'll blow it out. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to hit Control A. My decay rate is going to be quadratic. My intensity is probably going to be in the thousands. So we'll just start at 2000. We'll hit the render button. Ooh. Maybe it's going to be in the 20,000s. Okay, I'm barely getting something. I'm not going to go up too high, okay? Now what's happening here is, let's close this, close this, close this. In our render settings on the comment tab, we click this Enable Color Management button. And what this Color Management button does is it basically, I'm just going to give you the gist of it, is it takes inaccurate coloring and it makes it more accurate, okay? But in the process of doing that, it's giving us this, which is a very, very dark image. Now I could keep boosting my light up, but it's not going to make it accurate, okay? I have to go to one more thing. So after I've opened my render view, which is this guy, I'm going to go to Display, Color Management, and I'm going to say, if you look at my render settings, I'm telling Maya, I'm giving you sRGB images, and I want you to give me linear images, okay? So in here where it says Image Color Profile, I have to say, well, I'm going to give you a linear image, and I want you to display it as an sRGB. And you'll see right by just changing this setting here that I get something in my view. Okay, so we'll close these. Now I still want to take this light up. It's still a little bit low, so if we go to 50,000. Okay, and now we're getting some nice lighting in here. Let's close that. I'm also going to go into my settings, and we changed this intensity to 50,000. We changed that to quadratic. Under shadows, we still have this default setting on. Okay, we're using Mental Ray, and Mental Ray can actually do a much better job. So if we just go to Mental Ray and say use the light shape, and then hit render, what it's going to do is use the shape of the light to figure out those shadows. So it's actually going to brighten up the scene a little bit, and then we can adjust some of the stuff that we're doing. So I'm going to take my light now down. Let's say 35,000. Because I'm going to add another light. We always want to add at least 2 lights in the scene. Okay, maybe even more than that. Let's take this down to 15, and I'll just duplicate the light. So I'm just going to duplicate this, scoot it over here, maybe bring it in a touch, and then render it again. And now what we're doing is we're softening our shadows. This is obviously not softened, but we're not going to render it from there. We're going to be like this close to it, okay? So I don't even care about that weird area back there. I'm caring about these shadows that are inside here. Okay, and even like the ones that are up there. So maybe I want to angle this even a little bit lower. Let's pull this up here. Let's pull this one down there. Just a little bit more even, just to kind of blend that in a little bit better. There we go. Now we're getting some softer results with this. Okay, that's much nicer. Okay, so that's looking good. The lighting's working. Yeah, that's good. I'm going to add one more thing in here. Let me zoom out, or zoom to something better. I'm going to click on the blue circle just so I can see. Remember, the blue circle is what's going to render. Okay, so something like that, let's say. I'm going to render this out. I'm going to wait a couple seconds. Okay, it's obviously taking longer now that we have Mental Ray, which is doing a much better job. Right now we're at 11 seconds. You can still see there's some dark shadows inside here, which are fine. Okay, I'm going to click on this Save button. I'm going to go to my render settings, which is this clapper. And under the indirect lighting, I'm going to turn on Final Gather. And I'm just going to lower my settings, 50.5 and 50. And then I'm going to render the scene again. And what we're going to see is that a lot of these areas that are a bit dark will now become softened because of this. Now this is going to look really grainy, and then it's going to smooth itself out. So we just wait for it to smooth itself out. And we were at 11 seconds, now we're at 16. Here's the before, here's the after. Okay, so you can see, especially in areas like this, you can see where that helps correct some of that. And what Final Gather is doing is kind of bouncing the light a bit. Okay, so that's definitely going to help us in getting this to look much more realistic, because now we're getting some bounce light. It's a little dark here. We can always adjust that later though. Okay, so that's going to be our lighting setup for now. I'm going to turn off Final Gather for now just because it takes longer to render. But we'll turn it back on once we're ready to go. So I'm just going to save. I'm going to go to my outliner, grab my lights, make a new layer, and call this lights. Layer, close, close, save, and then the next we're going to start on our texturing.